Fellow Rotarians, I introduce Mike Hubbard, my friend, and soon to be yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Special affinity for this area of the state. And I know, in public speaking, you're not supposed to talk about politics, religion, or Auburn or Alabama. So I'm going to violate two of those today anyway. I'll go ahead, Paul, tell you what I really do for a living, and it's not being Speaker of the House. I run the Auburn Network. Do we have any Auburn fans here today? All right, we got a few of them. Well, you might not recognize my face, but that's my voice at the beginning of the Auburn Football Review TV show, if you've ever seen that. It goes, "This is the Auburn Football Review with Coach Gene Chiswick, brought to you by Coke Zero." That's me. People tell me all the time, "Man, you sound a lot taller than you are." So that's my real job. But I really enjoy the public service, and it has been an honor and a privilege to serve in the House of Representatives for 13 years, and certainly to be the first Republican Speaker of the House since Reconstruction. Before I get to that, I want to tell you a little story, since Paul mentioned that after my first session, which was 1999, I was selected as the Freshman Legislator of the Year. And it's probably because I lucked up. I didn't know what I was doing, and somehow I passed the mandatory auto liability insurance bill. But anyway, I got a call one day. I was at work, and I got a call and said that I had been selected as the Freshman Legislator of the Year. So I have to admit, I was feeling pretty good about myself that day. And I came home, and my wife, Susan, was cooking dinner. And I came in, and I said, "Honey, your husband has been selected as the most outstanding freshman legislator in the entire Alabama legislature." And she, without missing a beat, she said, "Well, Alabama's in sad shape. You're the best we got." So you don't have to worry about me ever losing my head, because Susan is going to keep it down. And another situation come up recently, and my friend Steve Klaus will know this gentleman. As Paul said, I served 2 terms as the chairman of the Alabama Republican Party, and I thought we did pretty well. We raised more money than we'd ever raised. We raised $5.5 million. The most the party had ever raised before was about $350,000. So that was pretty good. We put together a campaign 2010 plan. We won every statewide race. We won back a congressional seat that you all know about. We held a seat that had flipped during the middle of the congressional 2 years. And we flipped both houses of the legislature for the first time in 136 years. So I was feeling pretty good about my chairmanship, and I got word that a gentleman from Huntsville, Albert Peters, had said that I was the worst chairman in the history of the Alabama Republican Party. And I tell you, that troubled me a little bit. You know, my goodness gracious, surely I'm not the worst. And but thankfully, I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and Albert called me, and he said that he had heard that someone had told me that he had said that. He said, "I want you to know that I did not say that you were the worst chairman in the history of the Republican Party. As a matter of fact, I can think of at least 2 others who were worse than you." I think that was supposed to make me feel better. I'm not really sure. But it is great to be here with you today, and I have something that's very exciting to tell you about. I want to tell you about what we're doing in Montgomery. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. First of all, I want to thank Paul Lee. He has been, and I want to thank you for sending Paul to represent this area. Also, I know Donnie Chastain is here, and Steve Klaus, my good friend, is here as well, represents part of Houston County. Barry Moore, I don't think represents Houston County, but he's right next door in Coffee County. You have a great legislative delegation representing you, and all of these guys were a huge part of what we were able to accomplish in the legislature this last session and in the special session. Well, let me back up a little bit, and I'll go back to 2007. As Paul mentioned, I served as the House Minority Leader, and as did, I tell you, it's a tough job of being the minority. Steve has been in the minority, had been in the minority his entire career, I guess 16 years. And you know, the only thing we could really do was to try to keep bad things from happening. So we played defense all the time. Never been able to be in a position to pass things. We could just stop bad things. Let me tell you, there were a lot of bad things that we were able to stop. Some of them we weren't. But right after I served as the chairman of Governor Riley's inaugural, both of them, but after the 2nd when he called me in his office, and he said, Mike, I want you to do something for me. And I said, well, Governor, I'll do anything you want. What do you want me to do? He said, I want you to run for party chairman. And I said, Governor, I can't think of anything that I would like to do less than to be party chairman. I can't do it. Susan will divorce me. I just don't have the time to do it. So about 10 minutes later, I walked out of his office running for party chairman. He was very persuasive, but I'm very glad he did because it was a great experience. And right away, it was evident to me that if we were ever able to move from the minority to the majority, we had to have a plan. And the party, and I'm not saying anything about any previous chairman because they had their hands full and trying to run everything, but we were $144,000 in debt. They didn't mention that to me when I ran for chairman. But we came up with what we call Campaign 2010. Campaign 2010 was the most comprehensive and coordinated and ambitious plan in the history of the Republican Party in terms of both fundraising and in terms of the actual campaign. And it took some doing to try to convince people that it would work. And the first thing we had to do was to raise money. And we went around the state, myself and Senator Del Marsh, I asked him to be the finance chairman. He's now the president pro tem of the Senate. We went around the state and we asked people to invest in our plan. We couldn't guarantee them that we were going to be successful, but we guaranteed them that we were going to run quality campaigns, that we weren't going to give money to candidates, we were going to do things for candidates, and we were going to have a coordinated effort, get economies of scale, but most importantly, we were going to go out and recruit good quality candidates. And we had learned in previous elections that if you just wait for and hope that the right person is going to sign up, then you're really risking it. And it's like football. You can't hope that a player comes and signs up. You've got to go out and recruit them. So we put together this plan, and I tell you, we learned a lot of what we did in the 2006 race down here with Judge Benjamin Lewis. That was kind of our test on that. And we ran kind of a small case. The caucus at that time ran and worked with Benjamin. We had a guy that we put down here to work with Benjamin and Becky, and we learned from some of our mistakes, and we learned what we did right. And I tell you, we elected a great representative from down here, who was a Republican to represent this area in Benjamin. And I tell you, you have a great judge now. We hated to lose him out of the House of Representatives, but he's a great judge, and you got a great replacement in Paul. But we learned in 2006 what we needed to change, and we vowed to change that in the 2010 elections. It felt like that was our time. So we did exactly what we promised we were going to do. We recruited people. We looked for people who had never run for office before. And a lot of our freshmen had never held office before. We looked for people who were small business owners or professionals who had to live within a budget, to write a budget, make a payroll. And we got those people, and at the end of the day, we were very successful. On November 2nd, 2010, it was the most historic election in the history of the state of Alabama. As I said, we won every statewide race, but most importantly, we flipped the Alabama legislature. And I'm not going to be real partisan, I'm just going to tell the truth of how things work. We were able to flip from the majority of Democrats to a majority of Republicans. And not only did we flip to a majority, we flipped to a super majority. We went from a super minority to a super majority overnight. Senator Marsh and I went and sat down with Governor Riley at the time and said, we think it's important right now for us to pass sweeping ethics reform. And we want to do it now before the regular session because we want to send a statement that we were not joking when we said we were going to change Alabama. We were going to do it very quickly. We wanted to show the people of Alabama, and most importantly, the special interests that had been controlling the legislature for decades, there were new sheriffs in town. So Governor Riley called a special session. I'm very proud of the fact that in 7 days, we passed 7 bills that took Alabama from having the weakest ethics laws in the country to having some of the strongest ethics laws in the country. And it was needed for a number of reasons. First of all, Alabama had gained a reputation of being a corrupt state. I don't have to tell you all the scandals that we've had, the 2-year scandal and what's going on now. Legislators going to prison, legislators pleading guilty. it's just embarrassing. And more than that, it hurts Alabama from an economic development standpoint. And when you have Louisiana saying Alabama's more corrupt than us, then that means we've got a problem. So it was incumbent upon us to change that, because it's not fair to the people of Alabama. We're not corrupt people. People of Alabama are honest, God-fearing, hard-working, law-abiding citizens. And it was very important that the people of Alabama have trust in their government. And also important that people outside Alabama understand that there was a change that was taking place. And Bobby Jindal, the governor in Louisiana, and the Republican legislature there has done a good job in Louisiana as well. But we passed those ethics bills, and I can tell you, you may not have been paying attention, but there were a lot of folks in Montgomery paying close attention and say, you know what, I think these people really meant what they said. And very proud of what we passed. It was tremendously significant. I was honored, as Paul mentioned, to be selected as the Speaker of the House. That is a position that is elected by the body. So there are 105 members of the House. I was elected 100 to nothing. I guess there were 5 people that just abstained, but or weren't there. But very proud to be able to lead that organization. The House of Representatives is a great community, great brotherhood, if you will, and fraternity. And I was looking forward to being able to preside over an entity and make a change, and we have. I want to fast forward now to the regular session that just ended a few weeks ago. It was indeed the most productive session that the Alabama legislature has had in decades, if not ever. There's no question about that. The first thing that we did when we were running in 2010, part of our campaign in 2010 is we had a coordinated platform that everybody that was running for the legislature ran on. We called it our Handshake with Alabama. You probably heard about that. These were some conservative, pro-business, pro-family issues and bills that we said to the voters of Alabama, if you put us in charge for the first time since Reconstruction, here's what we promise we will do. We will take these issues up and we will pass them in the first year of the quadrennium. Well, I want to also go back and compare that, and I was absolutely determined after we had taken the majority, we were going to follow through and do what we said we were going to do. Because back in 2006, the Democrats came up with what they call the Covenant with Alabama. Is that right, Steve? The Covenant with Alabama. Had 19 issues on it. Most of them were our issues that they had killed year after year after year. Well, after 4 years, and they promised that they would pass about the 10th legislative day of the first session. 4 years later, they had passed 3 of 19. 8 had never been introduced. So it went to prove that they had no intention of passing those. It was simply political rhetoric. Well, we wanted to tell the voters of Alabama that the new leadership, when we shake a hand, whether it's literally or symbolically, that and we make a deal with you, we're going to follow through. So in the House of Representatives, we refiled every one of our handshake bills. And those bills, it was some more ethics bills that we had, voter identification, so you had to actually show a photo and prove you are who you say you are and that you're alive before you can vote. We had some pro-business legislation for small businesses that encouraged and incentivized you to provide health insurance for employees. Sweeping change in the way that we budget for the education budget, rather than just putting your finger up in the air and say, well, I think we're going to have this amount of money come in, and let's go ahead and appropriate all this money. And then halfway through the year, you say, well, gosh, we were wrong, so we're going to have to prorate the budgets. And by the way, you can't prorate salaries and benefits, so and that's about 85% of the budget, so we're going to take 15%, prorate it by whatever percent. Horrible way to run education. So we changed that. We had what we call a Responsible Budgeting and Spending Act, and what is a rolling reserve. That was the first bill that we passed, and the first bill signed by Governor Bentley in the new quadrennium. And I'm very proud of that, because what it'll do, it will force lawmakers to take a 15-year average of revenue that comes in, and you cannot spend money above that amount. So that means in good years, you're going to start building up a reserve, and then when you have bad years, it will be able to spend part of that reserve, and it's a common sense way to budget rather than just taking a guess. But we and that was a part of our handshake bill. We pre-filed all of the bills. The first day they could be considered in committee was the Wednesday after we went into session on Tuesday. We got all of the bills out. They were all on our regular calendar. We passed every one of the handshake bills by the 10th legislative day of the first year in the quadrennium. I'm very proud of that. Every one of those bills was passed by the legislature and signed into law by Governor Penny. So hopefully we sent a message loud and clear that we make promises and we deliver on those promises. And if we had just stopped there, it would have been an amazing legislative session. But we also tackled budgets. And it was a tough budget year. There's no mistake about that. It was very, very difficult. But you know, it also had a silver lining to it, because what it forced us to do as a legislature, and Steve is vice chairman of the general fund, which was really in tough shape compared to the Education Trust Fund. But we looked at every penny, every dime of money that the taxpayers sent us on how we spent it. And we divided it up into three categories: those that were absolutely necessary, absolutely essential; some that were nice but not absolutely necessary; and then those that just weren't necessary. So those that were not necessary, we got rid of. Those that were nice but not necessary, some of them we got rid of, some of them we just cut. And we have a state budget, both on the education side and the general fund side, that I believe is bare bones, but we will run state government. And I think it's understood that the state doesn't exist to give people jobs. The state exists to serve the people of Alabama who send their tax dollars to us, and we need to be good stewards of that money. I believe we've done that. So we have a nice baseline to work from. Times will get better, there's no doubt. The revenues will go up. But we're also looking at ways to make certain that we have constraints, because we won't be legislators forever. We'll have other legislators in, have some restraints to where we don't ever have a bloated state government. I believe that the people of Alabama, you expect us to run state government like you run your businesses. And I don't think that's too much to ask. As a matter of fact, that's what we should be doing. And we need to be tightening our belts, just like you are. We need to be looking at the benefits that we offer our employees. Now, we get hammered a lot by the unions to say, oh, you're trying to balance the budget on the backs of state employees or education employees. Nothing could be further from the truth. We respect our educators, we respect our state employees, but you have to understand that they work for the taxpayers, and everyone has to share in this. It had gotten to a position on the benefit side where it was totally out of control, to where the taxpayers were paying an inordinate percentage of not only health care, but also for retirement. So this year we asked state employees and education employees to pay an extra 2.5% toward their retirement. I don't think that was too much to ask. The state's still paying 12.5%. So they're getting a great deal. Tell me, is there anybody out there in the private sector who's doing that for their employees? I don't think so. I mean, it is a great plan. Most people don't realize this when you talk about the retirement system. Taxpayers this year put in $1 billion out of our two budgets to make sure the retirement system was able to function and was financially sound. $1 billion. 4 years ago it was $300 million. So obviously something has to be done. We cannot continue to ask the taxpayers of Alabama to put that kind of money into a retirement system to keep it propped up. And so we're making some changes, and there's some people kicking and screaming, but our number one priority is to make sure that that retirement system, those of you who are on RSA retirement, it's very important that continue to be sound. And we have an obligation to do that. Same thing with health insurance. On the education side, just a couple of years ago, I guess it was last year, employees, if you're a single employee, you have any idea what you paid for your health insurance, which is a Cadillac health insurance plan that none of us in the private sector could think about offering our employees. Anybody have an idea? $2 a month. You, the taxpayers, were paying $780 a month per employee. Out of control. We cannot continue to do that. So what we did this year is we actually reduced the amount that we appropriated for PHIF, which is the education side of health insurance. We also reduced what we appropriated for the state employees and told those boards, you guys go figure it out. Here's how much money we're going to give you. The taxpayers are not going to continue to just, you come in and tell us what you want, and we just hand it off to you because we have other things that we need to do. Again, I'm not downing state employees or education employees. I'm simply telling you the truth and the reality of what we have to deal with. And I believe what we have done is not punitive, as some people have said, absolutely not. It's fair. And we have first an obligation to be fair to the taxpayers and understand that that money doesn't belong to the state, that money belongs to you, and you've entrusted us to appropriate the money. I think we did an excellent job. Something that has never happened since I've been in the legislature. We passed both budgets before the end of the session. Since I've been in the legislature, the budgets were held until the very last day. Normally in the Senate, Steve, they put all kinds of crazy stuff in the budget, and then with less than an hour to go, they send it back down to us and say, okay, either you pass it or you don't have a budget. And it kind of puts a gun to your head. We had no choice but to pass it and had all kind of crazy things in it. This year we didn't do that. We passed the budgets early. We got them out. It was totally transparent, so everybody could see exactly what was in it, and then we sent them over to the governor. And I'm very proud of the fact that, again, a new way of doing business, and do it in a business-like fashion. I mentioned that we passed all of our handshake bills, and that it would have been a great session if we had just stopped, but we didn't. At the first of the session, we didn't think that we could deal with congressional and State Board of Education redistricting in the regular session. Thought we'd have to do it in a special session. But Senator Marsh and I got together and said, we think we can do this in the regular session. It would save the taxpayers $500,000 if we can do it in a regular session. So we took a 2-week working break so that we could go around the state and have public hearings. And to be honest, we had done a lot of heavy lifting in the legislature, and I knew that some of our legislators were getting fatigued, so a 2-week break was nice. But we came back and we passed congressional and State Board of Education redistricting inside the regular session. First time that that's ever been done. And very proud of the fact that we've done that. I'm absolutely confident that it will be approved by the Justice Department, and the next year we'll have to deal with legislative redistricting, which will be a little more controversial, but we're committed to getting that done. But that was just an exclamation point on the session. We also dealt, as I said, we dealt with ethics reform, budgeting reform. We passed a package of tort reform bills that are pro-business and from an economic development standpoint about creating jobs and putting business on a level playing field, which had not been the case for a number of years. We also got involved in economic development business. I put together a jobs commission of people all around the state. Charles Nayland from here in Dothan was on that commission. And went around the state and listened to people, listened to business owners. What can we do? What can the state do? What will help you to expand your business? What problems do you have? And something that's kind of unique is that we actually listen to people instead of us saying, hey, we got all the answers, here's the way it's going to be. We came up with some great ideas, working to cut through the red tape of the state bureaucracy. And we also passed a bill that is extremely innovative. We're the only state in the country that has it. I'm sure some other states will copy us. I'm very proud that we came up with this. And we passed called the Made in Alabama Jobs Bill. And what it does is it covers the foreign tariffs, the cost of foreign tariffs, if a foreign company chooses to locate in Alabama during the construction process. Now, it has all types of requirements on there. They have to spend at least $100 million and a certain number of jobs so that the numbers work out. But I can tell you that right now we have well over 100 foreign companies that are already over here looking to locate in Alabama. And we're working with Steve and Donnie and with Paul and the other members of your delegation to try to get some of those companies down here in the Wiregrass. But if we can do that, then it gives us a competitive edge over every other state. And I can tell you from the companies that have come to Alabama, from domestically or foreign companies, they are absolutely blown away by the work ethic of the Alabama worker. They want to work, they work hard, they're honest, and from a productivity standpoint, it's second to none. So I am very, very optimistic about the fact that we're going to be able to attract some new companies to the state of Alabama. But we passed that legislation, so we passed tort reform. And then something I want to talk about for just a moment, we passed tenure reform. Now again, the other side keeps talking about, oh, these are just mean Republicans, they're just mean people. We're not. What we're doing is we're trying to, for a change, look out for the taxpayer and for the students of Alabama. We had a system in place, a tenure system, that was broken. We had a tenure system in place that protected the worst teachers and the worst employees, rather than rewarding and helping the brightest and the best. And from an educational standpoint, the vast majority of our educators are top notch. But anytime you have thousands and thousands of employees, you're bound to have some bad employees and some that need to be dismissed. Well, we have a tenure system in place to where it was costing a school system an average of $300,000 just to fire a bad teacher. And so most systems couldn't afford it. And they would just say, well, we can't afford it, we're just going to let that teacher stay there. Well, who does that hurt? That hurts the taxpayer, of course. The worst person that it hurts is the student, who has to endure a bad teacher. We had the former Secretary of Education, Margaret Spelling, standing for Missouri last weekend at the Business Council of Alabama, and she said if a student has two bad teachers in a row, 2 years in a row, that student will never, ever catch up. So we passed what we call the Students First bill because it looks after the students first. And again, schools don't exist to create jobs. Schools exist to educate kids. And it's incumbent upon us and your local school boards to make sure you have the best employees that you can possibly have. So we didn't do away with any type of due process, despite what has been put out there. We didn't get it to where you can be fired because you don't like the color of someone's eyes, or whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, or they didn't support so-and-so in an election. That is absolutely has not been changed. What we did change is the appeals process. The process that we had brought in a federal mediator. All right, anytime you bring in the federal government, it's going to be screwed up. There's no doubt about that. But you had a federal mediator who had no incentive to ever bring it to a close. It would just keep on appealing and appealing and appealing. You've heard the stories. We got one that's going on now that I think is going to be taken care of pretty quickly. We had teachers in jail for having sex with students still being paid by the taxpayers. Got their salary and their benefits while they're sitting in a jail. We had one while we were passing the bill in Huntsville who was in jail for molesting 10 fourth graders being paid by the taxpayers. It's just not right. So now we've got it down to 45 days. And I can tell you that superintendents and principals, and I cannot tell you how many teachers have come up to me, and I know have come up to Paul and Steve and Donnie and said, thank you. Thank you for passing this. Because you know what makes them mad? When they're a good teacher, they come to work every day. And then there's a teacher there who is not doing their job, is slacking off, or just doing something because they know they have a job where they can't get fired. Now all of a sudden either they're going to get better or they're going to get gone. And that's the way it works in the real world. That's the way it needs to work in our school systems. I am very proud of that. I believe that this is, and I said during the time when we were working on this, that it was a line in the sand. We were going to decide whether Alabama wanted to embrace the status quo and keep things as they are, or we're going to venture out and embrace reform and change the way things operate. And it's tough for change. A lot of people don't like change, but this is a change that we needed. Very proud of the fact that we were past that. It was signed by the governor. It's in effect now, and I'm absolutely certain it is going to improve the quality of education that we offer our kids here in the state of Alabama. But from a standpoint of dealing with reform issues, dealing with very important substantive issues, we were very successful in this session. Another part of the reason I think we had great success is the communication we had with the executive branch. Senator Marsh and I meet every week with the governor and let him know what's going on our side, and he talks about what's going on his side. More importantly than that is the communication we had between the House and the Senate. Now, Steve, I keep calling him Steve because he served longer than me. The whole time I've been in the legislature, I think with you, with Democrats in control, this House and the Senate, I didn't think they liked each other. And they would do things to mess with each other and close the journal and work on this and kill this bill. we said, that's ridiculous. So Dale, Morris, and I sit down every week and we map out a plan. Okay, you're gonna work on this issue, so that means we're not gonna work on this bill, we're gonna work on this bill, because if we're both working on it, then we're wasting time. It's not efficient, just like running your business. You gotta be as efficient as possible. You have a finite number of days to work. So I think that one of the main reasons we were so successful is the relationship and the coordination we had with the Senate. But as successful as this session was, we're just getting started. That's the first year that we're in. We have lots to do. We have many more reforms that we're working on. We have a number of bills that are refiled, and I know of some bills that we're working on, and we've been talking to some other states that have been successful. One of them, I'll just throw out there, is requiring drug testing for welfare recipients. Now, I think most people would agree that if you're paying people not to work, they don't need to be out buying drugs with it. So that's something we'll throw out there, and I guarantee you, we call it every name in the book for doing that, but I think the people of Alabama would like that. So that's one of the issues that we'll be working on, and other issues to make sure that we keep our government small, we keep our government efficient, and we use your tax dollars wisely. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to thank you for coming. And if there's anyone in here that had any doubts about the Republican Party and wants to join it, send me this statement after the meeting.
Thank you very much.